The letter that changed everything. The morning sunlight poured into a modest two-bedroom home on the outskirts of Raleigh, North Carolina. The kitchen smelled faintly of fresh coffee and toast, but the air was charged with something far more exhilarating. Mia sat at the kitchen table, clutching a piece of paper in her trembling hands. Her dark curls framed a face that was lit with disbelief and excitement. This wasn't just a letter, it was the letter. The University of California. Berkeley had been her dream for as long as she could remember. It wasn't just the prestige, it was the challenge, the promise of a new chapter. Her father, Jeremiah, leaned against the counter, arms crossed, a proud grin spreading across his face. "You've done it, baby girl," he said, his deep voice warm with pride. "All those late nights, all that hard work, it's paid off." Berkeley. He whistled, shaking his head in amazement. Mia looked up at her father, tears glistening in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You never let me give up, even when I thought I wasn't good enough." Jeremiah chuckled, his broad shoulders shaking. "That's what parents are for. But let's be real. You did the work. I just cheered from the sidelines." Mia laughed, but her emotions bubbled too close to the surface. Her father was more than just her biggest supporter. He was her rock, her compass. A self-made man, Jeremiah had built a small logistics company from the ground up, working endless hours to provide Mia with every opportunity. He had always been the quiet hero, teaching her the value of hard work and kindness. Jeremiah walked over to the counter and picked up a crisp white envelope. "Speaking of opportunities," he said with a playful glint in his eye, handing it to her. Mia's brow furrowed as she opened the envelope. Her heart skipped a beat. Inside was a plane ticket, a first-class ticket to California. "Wait, this is for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," Jeremiah said, his grin widening. "You've earned it. Your first flight to Berkeley should be special. First class all the way." "Dad, this is too much," she protested, though her face betrayed her excitement. "Nothing's too much for my baby girl," Jeremiah replied, wrapping her in a warm hug. "Now, pack your bags. Your flight leaves tomorrow." That night, Mia could barely sleep. Her thoughts raced with anticipation, not just for her first flight in first class, but for the new life awaiting her. She lay in bed, thinking of everything her father had sacrificed to get her here. He rarely talked about his success, but she knew how much he had endured to build their lives. This ticket wasn't just a luxury, it was a symbol of how far they'd come together. The next morning, the Raleigh-Durham International Airport was a sea of activity. Mia stood in line at the check-in counter, clutching her carry-on bag and ticket. She wore her favorite sneakers, a pair of worn jeans, and a sweatshirt emblazoned with her high school debate team logo. It wasn't flashy, but it was her. When it was her turn, the gate agent scanned her ticket without a second glance, and Mia walked through the terminal, her heart fluttering with excitement. As she approached the jet bridge, she glanced again at her ticket, the bold letters first class staring back at her. Jeremiah's words echoed in her mind. "Keep your head high, Mia. You belong everywhere your dreams take you." Stepping onto the plane, she was immediately struck by the elegance of the first-class cabin. Plush leather seats, wide aisles, and soft lighting created an air of sophistication. She found her seat near the window and carefully placed her bag in the overhead compartment. Settling into the spacious seat, she took a deep breath. It felt surreal. But her excitement was interrupted when a flight attendant, a woman in her early 40s with a polished demeanor, approached her seat. "Excuse me," the woman said with a tight smile. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Mia looked up, startled. "Yes, this is 3A, right?" The flight attendant nodded but hesitated, her eyes scanning Mia's casual outfit. "It is, but this is first class. Let me double-check your ticket." Mia's cheeks flushed. "There's no mix-up," she said, her voice steady. "My dad bought this ticket for me." The attendant's polite tone began to crack. "I understand, But first-class tickets aren't cheap. Are you sure you're not supposed to be in economy? I'll check the manifest. Passengers nearby began to glance over, their curiosity piqued by the exchange. Maya felt their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others merely nosy. Her heart pounded, but she refused to let the embarrassment consume her. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, she said firmly. The attendant didn't budge. She turned toward the galley, muttering under her breath, and returned moments later with another flight attendant. The second woman leaned down and whispered something, glancing briefly at Mia before walking away. Instead of de-escalating, the first attendant crossed her arms. Listen, she said, lowering her voice but not her condescension. If you can't produce proof that this ticket belongs to you, we'll have to move you to the back. Mia felt her throat tighten. Proof. Her ticket had already been scanned at the gate. What more did they need? Before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? The voice was calm yet commanding, and it came from behind the flight attendant. Heads turned to see the captain of the flight standing in the aisle, his hat tucked under one arm. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and an air of authority that immediately quieted the murmurs around them. The flight attendant straightened her posture, her professional demeanor snapping back into place. Captain, I was just verifying this passenger's seating assignment. There seems to be some confusion about her being in first class. The captain's sharp eyes shifted to Mia, who was sitting frozen in her seat, gripping the armrests. Then, to everyone's surprise, his face softened and a warm smile broke across his features. Mia, he said warmly, addressing her by name. Good to see you. I had a feeling you'd be on this flight today. The room seemed to collectively hold its breath. The flight attendant's eyes widened, her confidence visibly shaken. Mia blinked, unsure how to respond. Oh, hi, she managed, still processing the shift in tone. The captain turned to the flight attendant. Is there a reason you're questioning this young lady's seat? His voice was polite, but there was an edge to it that made it clear he wasn't asking casually. The flight attendant hesitated. Well, it's just that. She didn't look. She stopped herself, realizing too late how her words might sound. I just wanted to confirm her ticket. The captain's expression hardened. Her ticket was scanned at the gate, wasn't it? Yes, Captain, the attendant admitted, her voice quieter now. Then that should have been the end of it, he replied firmly. Mia is exactly where she's supposed to be. Mia felt a mix of emotions, embarrassment, relief, and a growing pride in the man who had raised her. Before she could respond, the captain smiled at her again. How's your dad doing? Jeremiah. And I go way back. Mia's jaw dropped. Wait, you know my dad? Of course, the captain said with a chuckle. Your father built this airline from the ground up. He's the reason I'm here today. And trust me, he'd be proud of you. The captain was silent, but the revelation was deafening. A flight she'd never forget. Mia sat frozen in her first-class seat, her mind racing to process the captain's words. Her father had always been modest about his accomplishments, but owning an airline, that was news to her. She gripped the armrests, glancing at the captain, who was still smiling warmly at her, and then at the flight attendant, whose face had turned an unsettling shade of pale. The murmurs in the cabin began to grow. Passengers leaned in, curious about the unfolding drama. Mia could feel their eyes on her, some filled with awe, others with quiet judgment. She was caught between embarrassment and the overwhelming pride she felt for her father. I didn't know, Maya said softly, her voice trembling slightly. She wasn't sure if she was speaking to the captain, the flight attendant, or herself. The captain's smile widened. Jeremiah doesn't talk much about it, does he? He chuckled lightly. That's just who he is, always putting others first. But make no mistake, Mia. Everything you see here exists because of his vision and hard work. You're not just sitting in first class. You're sitting in his first class. The weight of the moment hit her like a tidal wave. Her father wasn't just a man who worked hard for their future. He was a visionary, someone who had built something that affected countless lives. But true to his character, he had never boasted about it, never even hinted at the scope of his achievements. The flight attendant cleared her throat, her voice faltering. I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding, miss. I didn't mean to." Her words trailed off, her discomfort evident. Mia turned to her, trying to find the right words. She wanted to be angry, to demand an explanation for the way she had been treated. But instead, she took a deep breath and said, "It's not about the seat. It's about how you made me feel. Like I didn't belong here." The flight attendant flinched as if struck, her expression crumpling with guilt. "You're absolutely right," she said quickly, her voice sincere. "I let my assumptions get the better of me, and I deeply regret it. Please accept my apology." Mia nodded slowly. She wasn't sure if she could fully forgive the woman just yet, but she appreciated the apology. It was a start. The captain glanced around the cabin, his authoritative presence commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but filled with purpose, "what we just witnessed is a reminder of something we all need to reflect on. We live in a world where appearances often dictate how we treat one another. But it's important to remember that every person has a story, a journey that brought them here. And every one of you belongs here, no matter where you're seated." The murmurs in the cabin quieted. Passengers sat back, many nodding subtly. Mia noticed a man across the aisle giving her an encouraging smile. A woman a few rows ahead offered her a small thumbs up. For the first time since boarding, Mia felt a sense of belonging. As the captain excused himself and returned to the cockpit, the flight attendant knelt beside Mia's seat. "Miss," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "if there's anything I can do to make this flight more comfortable for you, please let me know." Mia hesitated, her emotions still raw. But she nodded. "I'd like some water, please," she said simply. It wasn't a grand request, but it was enough to signal that she was willing to move forward. The flight attendant nodded quickly, her relief palpable as she hurried away. Maya turned to the window, gazing at the bustling runway. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, but she already felt like this flight would change her life. As the plane began to taxi, Mia's thoughts drifted back to her father. Jeremiah had always been larger than life to her. But this revelation added a new layer of depth to her admiration. How had he managed to build something so impactful while still being such a down-to-earth, devoted father? Her mind wandered to the sacrifices he had made. She remembered the long nights he spent at his desk, the weekends when he chose to work instead of resting, and the countless times he told her, "I'm doing this for us, Mia." At the time, she hadn't fully understood the weight of those words. Now she did. As the plane lifted off the ground, Maya felt a rush of emotions. This wasn't just a trip to Berkeley. It was a journey into the unknown. A world where she would carry her father's legacy while carving out her own path. The thought was both exhilarating and daunting. The in-flight service began shortly after takeoff. The flight attendant returned with a glass of water and placed it gently on Mia's tray table. Her hands trembled slightly as she said, "If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to ask." Mia offered a small smile. "Thank you." The gesture wasn't grand, but it felt like a quiet victory. Mia had always believed in standing up for herself, and this experience reaffirmed that belief. She wasn't just the daughter of an airline owner. She was her own person, deserving of respect in her own right. As the flight progressed, Maya noticed subtle changes in the cabin's atmosphere. Passengers who had initially turned away during the earlier commotion now offered her friendly nods or warm smiles. Even the flight attendants moved with renewed purpose, their interactions tinged with an extra layer of attentiveness. Mia leaned back in her seat, sipping her water as she gazed out at the clouds. The world below seemed so small, yet her place in it felt larger than ever. For the first time in her life, she truly understood her father's words. "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Just remember who you are, and the rest will follow." But as much as this experience had taught her about herself, Mia couldn't ignore the broader lesson it held. The way she had been judged wasn't unique. It was a reflection of a world that too often relied on appearances to determine value. If she could change even one person's perspective, whether it was a flight attendant, a fellow passenger, or someone else entirely, it would be worth it. Mia reached for her phone and opened a message from her father. "Have a great flight, baby girl. Call me when you land. Love you." Her heart swelled with emotion as she typed back, "I love you, Dad, and I'm so proud of you. You've done more than I ever realized." She hit send and closed her eyes, letting the hum of the plane lull her into a quiet reflection. This was more than just a flight. It was the start of something bigger, a journey not just to Berkeley, but toward becoming the person her father had always believed she could be. The legacy she never knew. The plane hummed softly as it cruised above the clouds, the sunlight streaming through the windows casting a warm glow over the cabin. Mia sat quietly in her first-class seat, her mind spinning with thoughts about her father's surprising legacy. She couldn't help but feel a strange mix of pride and guilt. Pride, because her father's success was extraordinary. Guilt, because she had never realized the full extent of his sacrifices or the magnitude of his accomplishments. She replayed the captain's words in her head. "Your dad built this airline from the ground up." The weight of that statement was still sinking in. How had her father managed to do so much without ever letting it overshadow their quiet, modest life in Raleigh? She felt a surge of gratitude and determination. If her father had worked so hard to create opportunities for her, she wasn't about to let him down. As Mia's thoughts churned, the flight attendant returned, her demeanor noticeably softer. She held a tray with a steaming cup of tea and a selection of small treats. "Miss Mia," the attendant said with a warm smile, "I thought you might enjoy this. It's on the house." Mia blinked in surprise. The hostility from earlier had vanished, replaced by what seemed like genuine kindness. "Thank you," Maya replied, offering a small smile as she accepted the tray. The attendant hesitated for a moment. "I just wanted to say again how sorry I am for how I treated you earlier. I made a terrible assumption, and I deeply regret it." Mia studied the woman's face. There was sincerity in her eyes, and for the first time, Mia felt the anger she had been holding on to begin to dissolve. "It's okay," she said finally. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." The attendant nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you for your understanding. If there's anything else you need, please let me know." Mia watched her walk away and took a deep breath. She wasn't used to being at the center of such attention, and it felt both empowering and exhausting. Sipping her tea, she gazed out the window, the endless expanse of clouds below reminding her of the vastness of the world, and her place in it. The gentle ding of the seatbelt sign caught her attention as the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're cruising at an altitude of 35,000 feet, and it's a beautiful day for flying. I hope you're all comfortable and enjoying the service. For those of you in first class, I trust you're being treated like royalty." There was a faint hint of humor in his tone, which drew soft chuckles from the passengers. "And to our special guest today, Miss Mia, I'd like to personally thank you for joining us on this flight. Your father is an extraordinary man, and it's clear his daughter is just as remarkable." Mia's cheeks burned as the passengers around her turned to look, some smiling, others murmuring in admiration. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the unexpected attention left her feeling both flattered and self-conscious. She managed a polite smile and a small wave, grateful when the captain's voice disappeared and the cabin returned to its usual hum of quiet activity. As the flight continued, Maya's thoughts drifted back to her father. Growing up, Jeremiah had been a constant source of support, but he had never spoken much about his work. To her, he was just Dad, the man who stayed up late helping her with science projects, cheered the loudest at her debate tournaments, and always had time for her, no matter how busy he was. Now she realized how much he must have kept hidden, both his struggles and his triumphs. She thought about the late nights he spent hunched over his desk, stacks of papers and files cluttering the surface. She'd often peek into his home office, wondering what could possibly keep him so occupied. When she'd ask, he'd smile and say, "Just work stuff, sweetheart. Nothing exciting." But now she understood. Those boring work things had built a company, a legacy that not only supported their family, but also impacted the lives of countless employees, passengers, and their families. Maya felt a swell of emotion. Her father's humility wasn't just admirable, it was extraordinary. The flight attendant returned, this time with a note in hand. "This is from the captain," she said, handing it to Mia with a smile. Mia unfolded the paper, her curiosity piqued. The note was handwritten in neat, blocky letters. "Mia, your father has always been more than a boss to us. He's a mentor, a leader, and a friend. I've been flying for him for over 10 years, and I can honestly say he's one of the best men I've ever known. He speaks of you often, always with pride. This flight is special because it's the first time I've had the honor of flying with one of his greatest achievements, you. Thank you for reminding us all what truly matters, Captain Davis." Mia stared at the note, her vision blurring with unshed tears. She clutched it tightly, feeling the surge of pride and love for her father. The idea that he had touched so many lives while remaining so grounded was overwhelming. She tucked the note into her bag, vowing to keep it as a reminder of this moment. The hours passed quickly, and soon the plane began its descent into California. The golden landscape of Berkeley came into view, its rolling hills bathed in the afternoon sunlight. Maya felt a flutter of nerves. This was it, the start of her new life. She was excited, but also a little afraid. Could she live up to the expectations that came with being Jeremiah's daughter? She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Just remember who you are." Her father's words echoed in her mind, steadying her. She wasn't just Jeremiah's daughter. She was Mia, a young woman with her own dreams, her own story. As the plane touched down, a ripple of applause spread through the cabin. Mia smiled, feeling a quiet confidence take root. This journey had already taught her so much about herself, her father, and the power of standing tall in the face of judgment. As she stepped off the plane and into the bright California sunshine, she knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. The roots of greatness. The California sunshine was bright and unrelenting as Mia stepped off the plane, her carry-on slung over her shoulder. The scent of jet fuel mixed with the warm coastal breeze, and the world seemed to shimmer with possibility. She paused for a moment, taking it all in. The busy terminal, the voices over the intercom, the bustling travelers. This was a far cry from her quiet life in Raleigh. Everything about this moment felt like a crossroads. As she entered the terminal, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The familiar name on the screen made her smile. "Hey, Dad," she answered, her voice carrying a mix of excitement and nervousness. "How was the flight, baby girl?" Jeremiah's voice was warm, and she could hear the undercurrent of concern in his tone. "It was eventful," she said, letting out a small laugh. "Dad, why didn't you tell me you own the airline?" There was a brief pause on the other end before Jeremiah chuckled softly. "I didn't think it was important. It's not who I am, Mia. The airline is just a part of what I've built, but my real legacy, that's you." Mia's throat tightened at his words. She stopped in her tracks, leaning against a wall near the baggage claim area. "Dad, I met the captain. He told me how much you mean to the people who work for you. It's incredible. I had no idea." "Sweetheart, the work I do isn't about recognition. It's about making sure you, and others, have opportunities. I never wanted my success to define me or put pressure on you. Your journey is your own." Mia smiled, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. "I understand that now, but I'm still proud of you, more than ever." "And I'm proud of you," Jeremiah said, his voice steady. "Berkeley is just the beginning, Mia. You've worked hard for this, and I know you're going to do amazing things." They talked for a few more minutes before saying their goodbyes. Maya slipped her phone into her pocket, her mind spinning with thoughts of her father and the responsibility she felt to carry on his values. As she waited for her luggage, Mia's thoughts drifted to the captain's words and the note he had written. She pulled it out of her bag and read it again, the neat handwriting almost soothing in its precision. The idea that her father had quietly impacted so many lives was humbling. For the first time, she wondered what sacrifices he had made that she might never know about. A memory surfaced from years ago. Mia as a child, sitting on the porch steps while her father worked late into the evening. She had been upset because he missed one of her school plays. At the time, she thought he didn't care. Now she understood it wasn't indifference, it was necessity. He had been building something bigger than either of them could have imagined. Her luggage finally arrived, and she made her way outside to catch a cab. As she settled into the back seat, she pulled out her phone and opened a note app. She began to write down everything she wanted to say to her father. The drive to her new dorm at Berkeley was both exhilarating and sobering. The streets were alive with energy. Students on bikes, joggers weaving through the sidewalks, coffee shops bustling with activity. She felt a pang of nervousness. Would she fit in here? Could she rise to the challenge of such a prestigious institution? As the cab pulled up to her dorm building, Maya stepped out and took a deep breath. The towering structure seemed imposing, but it also represented the start of something new, a chance to prove to herself, not anyone else, that she belonged. She checked in at the front desk and was handed a key to her room. The elevator ride up felt surreal. She was no longer the girl from Raleigh. She was a college student standing on the threshold of a new life. Her dorm room was small but cozy, with just enough space for a twin bed, a desk, and a dresser. She set her bags down and sank onto the bed, letting the quiet of the room wash over her. For a moment, the enormity of everything hit her, leaving home, starting college, and learning about her father's legacy, all in the span of a single day. As she unpacked, she came across the plane ticket her father had given her. She stared at it for a long moment, running her fingers over the bold first class printed at the top. It wasn't just a ticket. It was a symbol of everything her father had worked for, everything he had given up to ensure she had a chance to succeed. She propped the ticket up on her desk, a reminder of where she came from and where she was headed. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Keep your head high, Mia. You belong everywhere your dreams take you." Later that evening, Mia wandered around the campus, taking in the sights and sounds of Berkeley. The air was filled with the chatter of students, the hum of bicycles, and the occasional strum of a guitar from someone sitting on the grass. She found herself drawn to the library, its grand facade lit up against the night sky. Inside, the quiet was almost sacred. Rows of books stretched as far as the eye could see, and the faint scent of aged paper filled the air. She ran her fingers along the spines of the books, feeling a sense of wonder. This was what she had dreamed of, a place where knowledge and opportunity were limitless. As she sat at a table, her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Hope you're settling in, baby girl. Remember, you've already made me proud just by being you." Mia smiled, typing back a quick response. "Thanks, Dad. I'll make sure to keep making you proud." She put her phone down and looked around the library. The journey that had brought her here wasn't just about her father's sacrifices or her own hard work. It was about carrying forward the values he had instilled in her: resilience, kindness, and the courage to dream big. For the first time since leaving Raleigh, Mia felt a sense of peace. She wasn't just stepping into a new chapter of her life. She was stepping into her purpose. Her father's legacy wasn't just about the airline or the success he had built. It was about the person she was becoming. As she left the library and walked back to her dorm, the cool night air filled her lungs. The campus felt less intimidating now, more like a home waiting to be discovered. She looked up at the stars, twinkling against the inky sky, and whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." Finding her voice. The Berkeley campus awoke with the sun, the golden light creeping through the curtains of Mia's dorm room. The distant hum of voices and bicycles filled the air, a melody of energy and purpose that stirred her from sleep. She lay in bed for a moment, her mind lingering on the events of the past few days. Everything still felt surreal. The acceptance letter, the first-class flight, the revelation about her father, and now, the beginning of her new life. Determined to start strong, Mia swung her legs out of bed and began her morning routine. Her dorm room, though modest, already felt like a space she could call her own. A photo of her and her dad sat on the desk, their wide grins a reminder of the bond they shared. Next to it was the first-class ticket she had carefully propped up the day before, a silent symbol of her journey. After breakfast at the campus dining hall, Maya found herself wandering aimlessly through the quad. The towering trees and sprawling lawns were alive with students chatting, laughing, and rushing to their next destination. It was both exhilarating and intimidating. Everyone seemed to know where they were going, their confidence palpable. Mia felt a pang of self-doubt. Could she really keep up with the brilliant minds surrounding her? Did she truly belong here? She pushed the thoughts aside and reminded herself of her father's words. "Keep your head high, Mia. You belong everywhere your dreams take you." Determined to shake off the nerves, she headed to her first class, a philosophy seminar. The room was filled with students who seemed relaxed and self-assured, their conversations buzzing with intellectual excitement. Mia chose a seat near the middle, pulling out her notebook and pen as she waited for the professor to arrive. The class began, and as the discussion unfolded, Maya felt her confidence grow. The topics were challenging, but they sparked something inside her, a curiosity, a hunger to understand. By the end of the session, she had contributed to the conversation twice, earning a nod of approval from the professor. As she walked out of the classroom, her steps felt lighter. She had taken a small step toward proving to herself that she could thrive here. Later that afternoon, Maya found herself at the campus's bustling student center. Tables lined the wide-open space, each one representing a different club or organization. Students waved colorful flyers and called out to passers-by, their enthusiasm infectious. Mia hesitated at the entrance, unsure where to begin. She wasn't sure if she was ready to jump into extracurriculars, but the idea of connecting with like-minded people was appealing. "Hi there," a cheerful voice broke through her thoughts. A girl with bright red hair and a welcoming smile waved her over to a table covered in posters and pamphlets. "Are you interested in the debate team?" Mia's eyes lit up. Debate had been her passion in high school, a place where she had learned to find her voice and stand her ground. She approached the table, feeling a flicker of excitement. "I was on my high school debate team," Maya said, her nerves giving way to enthusiasm. "What's the team like here?" The girl, whose name tag read Jordan, grinned. "It's amazing. We compete nationally, and the team is like a family. You should totally join. We're having an interest meeting tomorrow. Come by and check it out." Mia nodded, feeling a spark of hope. "I'll be there." That evening, as the campus settled into a quiet rhythm, Maya returned to her dorm and opened her laptop. She had planned to call her dad to check in, but before dialing, she decided to do something she had never done before: research her father's airline. She typed the company's name into the search bar and was immediately met with articles, interviews, and photos. Here was Jeremiah, standing in front of gleaming jets, shaking hands with employees, and cutting ribbons at grand openings. Her chest swelled with pride as she read about the company's origins. Her father had started with a single cargo plane and a dream, building the airline into a respected name in the industry. One article stood out. It was a profile piece that described Jeremiah as a man of integrity, someone who prioritized his employees and customers above all else. The journalist had written, "Jeremiah's philosophy is simple: treat people with respect, and they'll soar with you." Mia sat back, letting the words sink in. Her father's success wasn't just about his work ethic, it was about his values. He had built more than a business. He had built a legacy of kindness and respect. She thought about the flight attendant on her trip to Berkeley. The woman's initial judgment and subsequent apology had left a mark on Mia. It was a reminder that assumptions and biases could be powerful, but so could forgiveness and understanding. Mia closed her laptop and stared at the first-class ticket on her desk. The ticket wasn't just a gift, it was a lesson. Her father had taught her to see the best in people, even when they faltered. It was a lesson she intended to carry with her as she navigated her new life. The next day, Maya attended the debate team's interest meeting. The room was filled with students who shared her passion for critical thinking and persuasive arguments. As she introduced herself and shared her background, she felt a familiar sense of belonging. The team was welcoming, and by the end of the meeting, she had already signed up for her first practice session. Leaving the meeting, Maya felt a newfound sense of purpose. Berkeley wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity to grow, to find her voice, and to create her own legacy. That night, Mia called her dad. "How's Berkeley treating you?" Jeremiah asked, his voice filled with warmth. "It's amazing," Maya said, her excitement evident. "I joined the debate team, and classes are going well. But Dad, I have to ask, why didn't you ever tell me about everything you've done? About the airline, about the people who look up to you?" Jeremiah was silent for a moment before responding. "Because it was never about me, Mia. It was about you. My success is just a byproduct of doing what I love and treating people the right way. I didn't want my achievements to overshadow your dreams." Mia felt tears prick her eyes. "But your story inspires me, Dad. It makes me want to be better, not because I have to, but because I want to." Jeremiah chuckled softly. "Then I've done my job. Remember, Mia, your journey is yours. Make it count." As they said their goodbyes, Maya felt a sense of clarity. Her father's humility and values had shaped her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Berkeley wasn't just a place to study, it was a place to honor the lessons her father had taught her and to create a future that reflected the best parts of him. She gazed out the window of her dorm room, the campus glowing under the night sky. For the first time, she felt ready, not just to face the challenges ahead, but to embrace them. "This is just the beginning," she whispered to herself, her resolve stronger than ever. As Mia hung up the phone, she leaned back against the headboard of her dorm bed, staring at the glow of the small desk lamp. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Your journey is yours. Make it count." She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to not just succeed academically, but to grow into the kind of person her father had raised her to be: kind, resilient, and unshakably grounded. Her thoughts turned to the debate team meeting. It had been a whirlwind of introductions, strategies, and schedules, but what stood out most was the camaraderie among the team members. For the first time since arriving at Berkeley, Mia felt like she had found a place where she could truly belong. Debate wasn't just about winning arguments, it was about finding your voice, standing firm in your beliefs, and learning how to listen. These were skills she'd relied on in high school, but now they felt more crucial than ever. Pulling her laptop closer, Mia opened her calendar and marked down the dates for upcoming debate practices and competitions. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was her chance to leave her mark at Berkeley, to contribute to something bigger than herself. But with that excitement came a familiar twinge of self-doubt. Could she keep up with the other students, many of whom seemed more experienced and confident? Could she balance the demanding workload of her classes and the intense preparation required for debate? Mia shook her head, pushing the doubts aside. She thought of her father and how he had faced countless obstacles to build his business. "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone," he had told her. "Just remember who you are." The next morning, Mia decided to explore the campus more thoroughly. She grabbed her backpack and a notebook, determined to immerse herself in the energy of Berkeley. The sprawling campus was alive with activity. Students hurrying to classes, faculty chatting in small groups, and artists sketching on the grass. Every corner seemed to pulse with creativity and ambition. Mia found herself drawn to the library again, its towering facade both intimidating and inviting. Inside, she discovered a quiet study nook on the second floor, where sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating rows of bookshelves. She pulled out her notebook and began jotting down her thoughts. Her mind wandered back to the flight attendant who had questioned her in first class. The memory still stung, but it had also taught her an important lesson. Assumptions could be dangerous. She wanted to write about it, to capture the feelings of hurt and triumph she had experienced. The words flowed onto the page as she wrote. Judgment is the easiest mistake to make. It takes no effort to assume, no courage to label someone based on a fleeting glance. But understanding. That requires patience, kindness, and the willingness to listen. I hope one day we live in a world where people see each other for who they truly are, not just for what they wear, how they look, or where they come from. Mia sat back, reading over the lines. It wasn't perfect, but it felt honest. She resolved to keep writing about her experiences, her thoughts, and the lessons she was learning. Maybe one day, her words could inspire someone the way her father's actions had inspired her. That evening, Mia attended her first debate practice. The room was filled with a diverse group of students, their voices sharp and confident as they discussed strategy and upcoming topics. The team captain, Jordan, stood at the front, her energy infectious as she outlined the goals for the season. "All right, everyone," Jordan said, clapping her hands together. "We've got a big competition coming up in 3 weeks. I want each of you to choose a topic you're passionate about and prepare a 5-minute opening argument for our next meeting. Remember, the key to a strong debate isn't just knowing your facts. It's owning your perspective. Speak from the heart." Mia felt a rush of excitement mixed with nervousness. This was her chance to prove herself, not just to the team but to herself. As the practice session continued, she listened intently to the discussions, absorbing the energy and passion of her teammates. When it was her turn to introduce herself, she stood up, her palms slightly damp with nerves. "Hi, I'm Mia. I was on my high school debate team, but this is my first time competing at the college level. I'm excited to learn from all of you and contribute to the team." Her voice wavered slightly, but the room responded with encouraging smiles and applause. Jordan gave her a thumbs up. "Welcome to the team, Mia. We're glad to have you." Over the next few days, Mia threw herself into her classes and debate preparation. She spent hours researching topics, crafting arguments, and practicing her delivery. The library became her second home, and her study nook on the second floor was where she felt most focused and inspired. But as the days passed, Mia began to notice something unexpected. The confidence she was building in debate was spilling over into other areas of her life. In class, she found herself raising her hand more often, contributing to discussions with a newfound sense of clarity. In conversations with peers, she spoke with conviction, unafraid to share her opinions. The nervousness she had felt upon arriving at Berkeley was slowly giving way to a quiet self-assurance. One afternoon, as she was leaving the library, Mia's phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. "Hey, just wanted to say your argument draft was great. You've got serious potential. Can't wait to see what you bring to the competition." Mia smiled, her chest swelling with pride. She hadn't realized how much she needed that affirmation. Jordan's words felt like a validation of all the effort she had been putting in, a reminder that she was capable of rising to the challenge. As she walked back to her dorm, the sun setting behind the Berkeley hills, Mia felt a deep sense of gratitude. For her father, for the opportunity she had been given, and for the chance to discover her own strength. She wasn't just finding her voice, she was learning how to use it to make a difference. That night, as she sat at her desk, she opened her notebook and wrote a single line at the top of the page. "This is just the beginning." For the first time, she truly believed it. The legacy she chose to build. The weeks flew by as Mia settled into her life at Berkeley. Classes were challenging but invigorating, and the debate team quickly became her second family. Her days were a whirlwind of lectures, research, and late-night brainstorming sessions, but every moment felt purposeful. For the first time, Mia felt like she was truly stepping into her potential, carving out her own path while staying grounded in the lessons her father had taught her. The day of the debate competition arrived with a crispness in the air that hinted of the coming autumn. Maya stood outside the student union building, clutching her notes tightly as the morning sun painted the campus in golden light. Her stomach churned with nerves, but she reminded herself of everything she had prepared for this moment. Jordan approached with her signature grin, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Here," she said, handing one to Mia. "It's our team's good luck charm. Drink this, and you'll be unstoppable." Mia laughed, accepting the cup. "Thanks. I'm going to need it." "You're going to crush it," Jordan said firmly, her confidence contagious. "Just remember, speak from the heart. That's where the real power is." Mia nodded, taking a deep breath. "Speak from the heart." She repeated the phrase silently, letting it steady her. Inside the debate hall, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Teams from universities across the state filled the room, their energy electric. Mia's team took their seats, and as the competition began, she watched speaker after speaker command the stage. The intensity was palpable, but instead of feeling intimidated, Maya felt inspired. Each argument reminded her of why she had fallen in love with debate in the first place: the power of words, the exchange of ideas, the drive to understand and be understood. When it was Mia's turn to speak, she walked to the podium with her heart pounding. The room felt enormous, every eye fixed on her. She unfolded her notes, but as she glanced at the carefully prepared pages, she hesitated. Something inside her shifted. The words on the paper were polished and precise, but they didn't feel personal. They didn't feel hers. She took a deep breath and looked up at the audience. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady. "I had prepared an argument for you today, complete with statistics and carefully chosen quotes. But as I stood here, I realized something. What I really want to share with you is a story." The room grew silent, the air thick with anticipation. "I want to tell you about a flight I took recently," Mia continued, her voice growing stronger. "It was my first time flying first class, and it was supposed to be a celebration of a new chapter in my life. But instead, I found myself questioned about whether I belonged there, about whether I deserved the seat I had been given." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience. "That experience taught me something profound. It reminded me that judgment is often the first instinct we have as humans. We see someone, and we think we know their story based on their appearance, their clothes, or their circumstances. But the truth is, we rarely know the full story. We don't know the sacrifices, the struggles, or the triumphs that brought someone to where they are." Mia glanced at her teammates, drawing strength from their encouraging smiles. "My father, a man who built an airline from nothing, taught me that true success isn't measured by what you achieve, but by how you treat others along the way. He showed me that respect, kindness, and understanding are the values that truly matter." She leaned forward slightly, her voice steady and clear. "Today, my argument isn't just about the topic on this page. It's about the power of seeing people for who they are, not for what we assume about them. It's about choosing empathy over judgment, kindness over criticism, and connection over division." The room was silent as Mia concluded, her heart racing. She stepped back from the podium, unsure of how her words would be received. But as she returned to her seat, the applause began, soft at first, then building into a wave that filled the room. Jordan leaned over and whispered, "That was incredible." Mia smiled, her chest swelling with a mix of pride and relief. For the first time, she had spoken not just to win, but to make a difference. And it felt like the most important thing she had ever done. Later that evening, as the competition wrapped up, Mia's team celebrated their victories. They had performed well, and while Mia didn't win her round, the feedback she received from the judges was overwhelmingly positive. One judge approached her afterward, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Miss Mia," he said, extending a hand. "Your argument today wasn't just persuasive. It was powerful. You reminded us all of something we too often forget. Thank you for that." Mia shook his hand, her gratitude genuine. "Thank you. That means a lot." Back in her dorm that night, Mia reflected on the day. She thought about the choices she had made, the decision to speak from the heart, the courage to share her story, and the realization that her voice could make a difference. She wasn't just finding her place at Berkeley. She was finding herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from her dad. "How'd the debate go?" "Proud of you, no matter what." Mia smiled, typing back, "It was amazing, Dad. I'll call you tomorrow to tell you everything. Love you." She set her phone down and opened her notebook, flipping to a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "Legacy isn't just what we inherit, it's what we choose to build." Mia sat back, letting the words sink in. Her father's legacy had given her the tools to succeed, but it was up to her to decide how to use them. And after today, she knew exactly what kind of legacy she wanted to create, one rooted in kindness, resilience, and the courage to always speak from the heart. As she closed her notebook and turned off the light, a quiet sense of fulfillment settled over her. This was just the beginning, but for the first time, she felt ready to embrace everything the future had in store.